Hello all. So my name is Zohir Chaudhry, and right now we will discuss about careers in environmental health. This is a topic that students are particularly interested in as they study this field. They want to know what they can do with the knowledge that they gain by learning more about environmental health. So where do environmental health professionals work? They work in various settings, and you can see in here that state, county, city health, and environmental agencies are one of the main employers of environmental health professionals. Environmental health consulting companies is another place where professionals can work. The federal government is another big employer, including local water districts, air quality management districts, private industries, corporations, as well as research organizations and universities. And not to forget that international organizations also hire environmental professionals. Some of the job titles that are common in this field are food inspector or food safety specialist, toxicologist, industrial hygienist or occupational safety manager or occupational safety specialist, communicable disease investigator, air quality manager or engineer, or water treatment operator, engineer or manager, hazardous waste manager or solid waste specialist, as well as environmental health educator are some of the specific titles that you'll probably see as you look for jobs in this field. One specific place where a lot of professionals work is essentially an industrial hygienist or occupational health and safety specialist. And there are various titles that you can see depending on the specific industry where you're working in. If you're working in a hospital, you may be your title may be occupational health physician, occupational health nurse. If you're working in a specific industry where you're trying to modify the working conditions, your job title may be environmental health and safety manager or engineer. So let's go over them briefly in here. So these job titles and job responsibilities, as I just mentioned, are very similar with with a lot of overlap. And the job title varies depending on the specific employer or workplace. So occupational health and safety specialists and technicians or managers or industrial hygienists are responsible for control of hazards that affect workers and the community. They collect data on and analyze many types of work environments and work procedures. Their work setting, they work in a variety of settings, such as offices or factories, and job often involves considerable field work and travel. You do require a bachelor's in occupational or environmental health safety or related scientific or technical field, and MPH would also be definitely very useful. Occupational health physician and occupational health nurse are involved with prevention and treatment of occupational related illnesses and injuries. They investigate hazards in work environment and develop procedures for their abatement. They also conduct health education programs for prevention of work-related diseases. And finally, environmental health and safety managers or engineers combine knowledge of health safety and engineering to develop procedures and design systems to protect people from illness and injury and property from damage. Their work environment is typically in offices, but they may also spend time at work sites when necessary, which requires travel. Again, a bachelor's degree in environmental health and safety or an engineering discipline is required. MPH or MS may also be needed depending on the discipline. In all of these cases, I do want to mention that REHS certification is really helpful, and this is something that we'll talk in a subsequent PowerPoint presentation. Another very popular job track is food inspector, food safety specialist. They're involved with the cleanliness and safety of foods and beverages consumed by public. They inspect restaurants, dairies, food processing plants, and other food preparation venues in order to control biological hazards from sources such as E. coli, Salmonella, and other foodborne agents. They're also responsible for examining methods for handling, processing, serving of food to ensure compliance with sanitation rules and regulations. Within these fields, there may be other job titles such as restaurant inspectors, consumer safety inspectors, import inspectors. Restaurant inspectors are responsible for overseeing the safety of food served in local restaurants. On the other hand, consumer safety inspectors work in privately owned meat, poultry, and egg processing plants, ensure the plant is operating safely by following all safety regulations, and they also conduct regulatory oversight activities inside the plants in matters relating to other areas of consumer protections, example, misbranding. Import inspectors work at ports and other points of entry to the United States. They make sure that products imported from other countries are as safe as those produced domestically. Continuing on with the environmental careers, environmental health inspector is another job category, and they primarily work for state and local governments, responsible for monitoring and enforcing government regulations for environmental quality. And this includes pollution inspectors, noise inspectors, water quality inspectors, sewage inspectors. They may also visit toxic waste dumps, factories, and other sources of pollution in order to collect air, water, waste samples for testing. The professionals that are working here, they may be sent out to follow up on complaints from the community, attempt to determine the sources and nature of environmental pollution, and provide necessary background data for enforcement actions. And there are quite a few fields and categories within this job title. For example, drinking water, stormwater pollution control, ocean water pollution control are all possible job titles and job duties that environmental health professionals or inspectors they might be working on. They must understand the relationship between water quality and disease. In our modern era, the risk these risks are subtle, but do require greater commitment to monitoring. Also, they must evaluate stormwater pollution control techniques. Stormwater can directly affect ocean water quality, and this is a major concern for environmental health. Wastewater contamination is another track. The potential threat to human health posed by sewage discharge is significant. Understanding contamination between sources of wastewater and drinking water are very common, and it's very important to understand that, and it is definitely preventable. Indoor air quality, it's another important field. Monitoring and remediating mold or other sources of indoor pollution, it's another job track that environmental health professional can specialize. Vector control specialist, this is also pretty popular. They're responsible for enforcement of various public health laws, sanitary codes, and other regulations related to the spread of disease by vectors, such as mosquito-borne diseases, rabies, or other zoonotic diseases. At the local government level, they may be responsible for conducting community education program, monitoring animal bites, collecting specimens for testing, etc. Environmental toxicologist is a very popular field as well that requires significant knowledge of chemicals and how chemicals affect human body. The field of environmental toxicology specializes in the effect of toxic chemicals upon the environment and living creatures, such as human beings and wildlife. On the other hand, the field of ecotoxicology is concerned with the effect of pollutants on ecosystems. Broadly speaking, ecotoxicology investigates dispersion of pollutants into the physical environment, their impact upon biological chains such as food chains, and the toxic effects within the ecosystem. The work environment of toxicologists are typically offices and laboratories. They're employed by pharmaceuticals, hospitals, private industry settings, as well as government agency. in academia as well as in research. And the job outlook is actually pretty good. You can browse these websites to learn more about the job outlooks of toxicologists. Beside environmental toxicologists, we also have occupational and industrial toxicologists, medical toxicologists, veterinary toxicologists, and forensic toxicologists. Occupational and industrial toxicologists investigate the effects of chemicals found in the workplace upon the health of workers. Medical toxicologists specialized in the prevention, evaluation, treatment, and monitoring of injury and illness from exposure to drugs and chemicals, as well as biological and radiological agents. Important areas of medical toxicology include acute drug poisoning, adverse drug effects, drug abuse, addiction, and withdrawal, chemicals and hazardous materials, as well as terrorism preparedness, venomous bites and stings, and environmental and workplace exposures. The medical toxicologists also inform and educate health professionals and the public about toxicological hazards to pets, livestock, and wildlife. I apologize. So that's veterinary toxicology. They work in academia, in veterinary medical diagnostic laboratory, poison control centers, and government agencies, including industry, research laboratories, and private consulting firms. Veterinary toxicologists, they study naturally produced toxins that come from plants, animals, and bacteria, fungi, and phytoplanktons, and the toxins that are a result of pharmaceuticals, feed additives, radiation, and environmental agents. One of the main things that a veterinary toxicologist does is help people understand the toxicological hazards that affect pets, livestock, and wildlife. And finally, forensic toxicology is a multidisciplinary field involving the detection and interpretation of the presence of drugs and other potentially toxic compounds in bodily tissues and fluids. Moving on to research position in environmental health. So environmental health researchers or analysts, they must specialize. It's a specialized field. They must have specialized training in environmental health and be able to conduct basic research on the risks associated with exposures to certain specific hazards and conduct statistical analysis of the impact of such exposures on human populations. They may also work in universities and research units, and the job may be in laboratory as laboratory scientists or laboratory technicians. They may be epidemiologists or biostatisticians as well, who can be hired as environmental health researchers. And another very important environmental health career track is environmental law. So environmental lawyers specialized in the field provide input to government agencies, assist in the formulation of environmental policies, and may be involved in litigation concerning environmental health problems. Other environmental health disciplines are solid and hazardous waste response, like deals with solid hazardous response, deals with lead paints or biomedical waste, as well as underground storage tanks. And you can see that professionals that are involved in solid and hazardous waste response, they need to manage solid waste and prevent problems that it can have with our air, water, and other areas of our environment. Lead paint professionals deal with lead. Lead does remain one of the biggest environmental health threats to children, and these professionals play an active role in this issue to prevent further spread of lead in the environment and exposure to children. Biomedical waste specialists, on the other hand, they manage biomedical waste and underground storage tanks. They need to be properly designed so that it doesn't leak in and contaminate the soil and groundwater. So monitoring the health of these underground storage tanks, whether they are intact, is very important, and environmental health professionals do play a role in this as well. So I hope that this set of slides and this discussion was helpful to understand the various environmental health professionals and the various tracks that environmental professionals can take. Thank you for listening. And again, please do not forget to subscribe. Thanks.